Okay, everybody, we're going to get started here. So first of all, welcome on this pretty ugly, wet, windy night in Barcelona from wherever you're joining us. Thank you so much for taking the time. We really appreciate it. We have lined up a great special guest for today's webinar, a gentleman by the name of Lars Schedin. Lars, I will pronounce it much better later.
No, that was...
Okay, let's see how we're doing now. Lars, try again, one more time, please.
I just said that was perfect.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay, all right, getting straight into everything. So just giving you all a very quick introduction of myself, anyone who doesn't know me. My name is Dermot Daltoon. I head up the commercial side of the business of Submer Immersion Cooling. We have many channels on which you can follow us, so please check us out on all of them. We frequently release some very good video material, audio material, other things as well. All of you who know us will definitely have seen that. Apart from that, we will save some time for Q&A at the end of the discussion. If it makes sense in the meantime for us to also have some of those questions answered live, then absolutely, by all means, we will. But if you have anything, please do remember, type it into the Q&A section at any time during this particular discussion. So without further ado, please, a warm welcome to Lars Schedin. Lars, the CEO of EcoDataCenter. Lars, unfortunately, doesn't have a camera. I think he's putting everything he has into the data center. Lars, we have to make a little bit of fun of that. But I'm sure this picture is also very representative, and we're very excited to hear what you have to tell us today. Maybe you could give us a couple of highlights about yourself before going into the EcoDataCenter side of things.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Sorry, I can self now. Yeah, okay. Now it sounds better. Can you hear me? Good. Okay, so I continue, then I assume that everyone can hear me. I'm Lars Schedin. I'm quite senior person, which is another word for being old. I've been working now for 35 years, mainly within business development and private equity cases. My last employment before this was as a senior vice president at Electrolux Group. And since 15 years back in time, I've been running projects in acquiring and developing companies. Yeah, I'm Swedish, married, 3 daughters and a German Shepherd. Spending my time in the Stockholm archipelago now, considering the circumstances in the world. So could we move on to the first page? Thank you very much. 4 years ago, I was asked by my chairman, Lars Tunnell, who previously was the CEO of SE-Banken, one of the large Nordic banks, to become CEO for a project. The mission was to develop a project into a company to develop the greenest data center solution there is in the world. And we did that together with a municipality-owned utility company. The story with EcoDataCenter started 6 years back, and when I joined, there was no assets, there was nothing. And today we have 4 data centers, 2 in the northern part of Sweden and 2 in the region of Falun, which is 200 kilometers north of Stockholm. I will come back to that. And we are, since 2 years back, also a subsidiary of Areim, which is a real estate investment trust with some serious investors behind, such as the pension funds in Nordic, Allianz, which is an insurance company, IKEA, which you all know about, and also some big pension funds outside Nordic. And the mission is to build a Swedish alternative to our competitors, mainly from America. And the reason is that we think that Sweden is a great option for everyone to deploy their service in. Before we go on, it's very much relating my story about the greenhouse effect. And to be fair and frank from the very beginning, I love the greenhouse effect. Without the greenhouse effect, the average temperature in the world would be some minus 20 degrees below Celsius, and today it's 15 degrees. So greenhouse effect as such, that is good, but what we say, and EcoDataCenter is a supporter of that, is that we need to take control, fully control of the incremental emissions that is now taking place in the world. Considering the, no, please go back.
Sorry, Lars.
Thank you. No, but considering the challenges that we are all facing now in terms of times of Corona, one good thing that we have already seen is some significant improvements in climate in certain part of the world. For instance, if you might have seen that the dolphins is coming back to the channels in the Venice. So it goes fast, and I think that at the end of this crisis that is taking place now, we will also see that the environment could easily and fast be improved by certain steps. There is a EU Commission that has now recently deployed or released a report called Shaping Europe's Digital Future. That one was released in February, and that also says that the data center should be climate neutral at the year 2030.
Yeah, Lars, I think if you were following our friend Greta Thunberg over the last couple of days and weeks as well, even during this, I know she's moved her Friday strikes to virtual strikes or online strikes, but she's still continuing to produce quite a lot of great content together with some very, very prominent people around the world. And one thing that she said really stayed with me, which was, in order to deal with a crisis, we have to recognize it as a crisis. And that's what we've done, I think, with Corona, and what we have not yet really done on a large scale regarding our current environmental crisis.
Indeed, and I agree with that. So that's the other side of the coin here, with all the bad things that is happening right now, that we will see less people dying from diseases based from pollutions, etc. Anyhow, my message in these presentations will be three. It will be that high density demand will increase. That means that high density per rack, the power per rack, will increase over the next couple of years. The second one will be that high density requires a completely different kind of cooling solutions in order to provide the services. And thirdly, these new demands will require the market to put the service very close to the sources where the power is generated. So that's what I will come back to, and please move on and look at this slide. It's quite worrying, to be honest. It shows that the blue part, which is electricity and heat production, that part is causing more and more, it should say, carbon dioxide emissions equivalents per segment. That is by far the fastest growing and the mean part of carbon dioxide emissions right now. It counts for almost 50% and still counting. And we also know that ICT is currently some 7-8% of the total electricity consumption in the world. But within 10 years, some people believe that it will be up to 20%. And I think that we can all agree that the usage of digital information, digitalizations, will not become less than it is today, but rather more intensive than it is. So this is something really that we need to take control of. So please move on. This is that even though that there is a lot of efforts put into alternative power production, the main source for power in the world is still the brown line, that's coal. And together with the green line, gas, and the red one, oil, that counts for still 2/3 of the total power production in the world. And this is facts. So 20, 30 years ago, it was still 67%, and today it's still 67%. So the power production as such is crucial for the sustainability in the world. It doesn't matter that we are putting so much efforts yet into alternatives such as wind, tide, sun, and biomasses. It takes time. So in the meantime, we need to take control and put this huge consumer of power to the sources where it's not any fossil-based power production at all. Please move on. Also, it's important to understand that just because you've got a lot of renewable power available doesn't necessarily mean that that region is sustainable. And fact is that country like Iceland, I hope I'm not stepping on any toes here now, but Iceland has got 100% renewable energy, but still they're causing a lot of emissions. And Germany has got a lot of coal based power production, and they are better than Iceland in terms of carbon dioxide emissions per capita, it should say. It's per person. Mm-hmm. So it's all about not only the source as such, but also how you are actually using the sources. And this is also very much depending on how you are importing and exporting the goods that you are consuming or producing. So just because China is causing a lot of emissions, if you are consuming it in Sweden, we should carry that emission and not China. So in that terms, Sweden is very polite country to put deploy your capacity in. Please move on. And this is the important analysis. I don't claim these bars to be 100% correct, but this is our understanding about the market trends in our industry. First of all, in-house data centers. Previously, most large companies were hosting their own data centers. Reports are claiming that 80% of those will move out to colocation providers or cloud providers within the next coming 5 years. We believe so as well. It's not the core competence for any of the big companies to run their own data centers. It's better and cheaper, it's more reliable to move it into a professional provider, either cloud or in combination with colocation. And a segment of its own is system integrators. They have previously also been running their own in-house data centers, but even though they are also moving into colocation to a large extent. The reason why we're putting them separately here is that it's a huge segment for our industry to cope with. The third is hyperscale or cloud provider. That's the big ones, as you all know. AWS, Microsoft, Azure, SoftLayer, Google, etc. You know them all. They, in terms of volume, by far the most growing consumer of capacity right now. Mainly they're doing it by building their own data centers, but they're also using or working together with some subcontractors in certain parts, but mainly they're building their own data centers. Fourth, colocation. Colocation has got a stable growth, particularly green data centers, and that will remain. We see no signs that it will be lowered in the future. But finally and foremost, which is the subject that we are looking at, That's HPC, high performance computing. Everything relating to computing capacity. That is its own segment in our view, because HPC requires supercomputing or quantum computing. And in order to do that, you require a lot of power. And since HPC to a large extent is not latency dependent, we see that big companies running their own HPC or computing requirements looking for places close by the power production in itself. And by that, you will have no distribution losses, and also you can be sure about where the power production comes from. And in that terms, Nordic is the perfect place to be in, since Nordic has a lot of renewable energy, cheap energy, stable energy.
And also you have a good history of HPC in Sweden, for instance.
We do. Yeah. Very much related to the university and academic world. We have. And we are putting a lot of efforts now into Internet of Things, machine learning, and of course, artificial intelligence. And that is the segments that will be fast growing now. And if we briefly explain it, it contains of three parts: storing data, collecting and storing data, which will be significantly improved by 5G when that is coming through. Secondly, it will require all this data will be computed in factories. That's what we are focusing on. And the knowledge out from this computing will be put in the edge, and that will be everywhere. But the big chunk will be in computing. And when we're talking about computing here now, previously we've been talking about density of 5 to 10 kilowatt per rack. But now we are seeing 100 kilowatt per rack or even higher. And 100 kilowatt per rack, 100 kilowatt into 1 square meter requires a much more sophisticated way in cooling in order to perform these calculations.
And as EcoDataCenter, you are focusing on HPC, is that correct?
We do, yeah, we do. We provide co-location of course as well, but that is more for our customers. Starts with co-location, but everyone is looking into machine learning and artificial intelligence right now. So it's a combination of the two. But we believe that HPC will, in a very short period of time, be larger than the co-location in itself. Okay. And this is another analysis provided in November 19, seeing that already as per now, more than 50% of the racks contains of more than 11 kilowatt per rack or higher. So many companies define high density as 10 kilowatt or higher. We are now talking about 40 kilowatt or higher per rack. This will increase rapidly now, and the market, as you can see, 5% is more than 20 kilowatt per rack. That could still be supported by air cooling, but if you go up more than 20-25 kilowatt per rack, then I would be more careful in providing that kind of service. I would rather go for a suggested liquid cooling solutions, which is differently than the air cooling. And that's what we are focusing on in EcoDataCenter.
I can share with you, Lars, that when I joined Submer back in 2018, we were seeing requests for in and around, I would say, maximum 20 to 30 kilowatts per rack. And already today, especially in supercomputing HPC, we're up in the 80 kilowatt plus designs.
And so are we.
Yeah.
Yeah, so are we. So in 2 years of time, we will be see 150 kilowatt per rack from time to time. I'm sure about that. And this is another way in showing that Microsoft released now in January how they will become climate neutral within a couple of years. And currently their emissions, the carbon dioxide emissions, to 50% derives from computing. And that is per today. And Microsoft is still focusing very much on other parts. So 50% is far more than I personally ever expected. So this is also one evidence on that computing is the most causing the most emissions of the different kind of digital services that you can provide. Please move on. This is where EcoDataCenter is located. We have 2 data centers in northern part of Sweden. It's close with Facebook. But the ones that we are focusing on right now is in the region 200 kilometers north of Stockholm, the red dot on the Swedish map. And as you can see, that is very close to the Americans, like Microsoft, that is 60 kilometers east of us, Google, that has bought land 40 kilometers south of us, and Amazon, that has built 3 data centers south of us. The difference here is that Microsoft and Amazon will be polluted with nuclear power. It's not possible otherwise. While where we are, it's not possible to get any nuclear power because the national grid in Sweden goes from north to south. So there is one nuclear power close by where Microsoft is located. It's called Forsmark. And even though it's only 100 kilometers east of us, we simply can't get that electrons. It's impossible, physically impossible. Furthermore, what we can do in our part of the region, we can reuse the heat. You can't do that where Microsoft is. You can't do that where Google is located. And Amazon could have done it in the location of Västerås, but they did not. So we are having a potential in our share called Falun of 500 megawatt capacity, whereof everything could be reused.
And you're talking about reuse by district heating, or what kind of reuse?
It's a combination. I will come back to that, but mainly district heating, yes, but also producing pellets.
Gotcha.
This is Falun Campus. Falun Campus is 80,000 square meters that we have acquired from the municipality. And it's surrounded with the highest physical security there is. So the first thing that you will meet is this gatehouse with the security, which is bulletproof. And it's also surrounded with the giant wall, the Chinese wall, with rocks, and of course fences and cameras and everything that is required. We are focusing on 2 parts. Of course, the physical security, unfortunately, we believe that it's going to be necessary in the future. But secondly, we're also offering the most sustainable solution there is, particularly focusing on high density requirements. We are also classified by the Swedish Security Police. And that means that we are working with some security experts in order to screening employees, visitors, and suppliers, and also that they are helping us with processes and educations, and also the design of security when there are new solutions. Next slide, and this shows the site from above. And currently we have built what's inside the green part, which is 8,000 square meters and 10 megawatt of capacity. And very soon we will start building the building to the left. We have all the building permits, and it will be getting started now after summer this year. And that will probably be some 15 to 20 megawatt capacity. All in all, this site will have more than 100 megawatt capacity to offer the market. Okay, the next one shows what I previously told you about, that this shows the national grid, and it's obvious here that even though it's a blue line, dotted line, that shows the nuclear land and where is the renewables. So everything south of the blue line, that's very much fed by nuclear power. And the reason why we are so much into nuclear power, it's not fossil-based, but we're noticing already now that the European companies that we are meeting and talking to, they want to make sure that no fossil-based power, of course, but also making sure that there can by no means be any potential nuclear power. It's extremely important to certain companies. And obviously it will become more and more important, especially for German companies, such as Germany is in the front line now, closing down the nuclear plants. So are Sweden, but we are far behind in that sense. So the blue line is very important. You simply cannot get any nuclear electrons to Falun. Also, the last bullet is that in Falun, our emissions from power is 11 grams carbon dioxide emissions per kilowatt hour. And since it's renewable energy, how could it be? Well, I will come back to that because it's important that there is no power coming without emissions. So any companies claiming that they are climate neutral because we are buying renewable energy, it's simply not the fact because it is not possible. I will get back to that and look at the temperature. Also, it's important how the average temperature, the profile of the temperature is looking at. We are compared here now Mannheim with Falun, and these differences will have a significant impact to the PUE because you require more cooling solutions in Germany compared to Falun. But also this is not as cold as you will find in the northern part of Sweden. When it's really, really cold, then the air becomes very, very dry as well, which is not good neither. So in that fact, we have seen that Falun is in average a perfect place to be in. From many sense, it's very close by to Stockholm, so it's easy to get the train to our side. It's close to a fire brigade and to the police. It's a very well-educated area, so it's easy to get university degrees. And temperature-wise, it's a great place to be in.
And is there a reason you're comparing yourself to Mannheim in this?
Well, we have seen that German company now is very much eager to understand the benefits on moving their computing capacity to Sweden. So that's why we have done this for Mannheim. We can do this of course for any city or municipality.
I was just going to say Mannheim is an interesting place to do it for, and apologies to any Germans out there.
Yeah, and this is also what you can see, that if we are applying 10 megawatt of capacity, of course that is a big one, but fact is, as my CTO mentioned, 10 is the new 1 in terms of megawatt. 5 years ago, there was just a handful that could require 5 megawatt of capacity. Today, it's probably more than 100 companies. In 2-3 years from now, there will be a lot of companies requiring 5 megawatt or more. But looking at 10 megawatt, the PUE automatically will be higher in Germany than in Falun. We got a PUE of 1.15. That means that in a year, the German comparison will emit 53,000 tons of carbon dioxide emissions, while it will be 887 in Falun. So it's 98% decrease just by moving it to Falun, without even reusing the heat.
Yeah, but you're also doing this regarding the electricity generation methods as well, yeah?
Exactly, that's correct.
Okay.
So the reason why we got 11 gram per kilowatt hour in Falun is because we are applying the life cycle perspective on the power production. So hydropower in Sweden has a jet of 9 gram per kilowatt hours, and wind power has 15 grams of carbon dioxide emissions per kilowatt hours, and the mixture makes it 11 grams per kilowatt hour. So we got more hydro than wind power, and that is when you're actually building the plant with concrete and the transportation and everything. That is a built-in emissions. That debt needs to be taken by someone, and we are amortizing on that debt. That's why we are including that in our calculations. So the next slide will show what we are doing. We are purely run on renewable energy. Most of our competitors would then claim that they are climate neutral because they are purely running it on renewable energy. Fact is, no, there is no such thing as a free lunch. It's not possible because all the concrete and everything requires some emissions. And as said, we are adding 11 grams per kilowatt hour in our calculations. Then we are connected to the municipality combined heating and power plant, which is the red one. They were actually the one who initiated this project from the very beginning. So it's thanks to this municipality-owned utility company that EcoDataCenter exists today. But a couple of years into the project, they said that, hey, we are not the perfect owner of a data center company. So in that process, we became the owner of the data center. We acquired all the land and we developed all the land, but it was all made together with this combined heating and power plant. And they have been extremely innovative and pragmatic in finding solutions together. So we are putting in the heat to the district heating system, heating the municipality. And we are getting free cooling or cooling back for free because instead of the heat. But during summertime, the need or the demand for heating is very limited, to say the least. Then we are sending the heat down, as you can see the arrow to the left, the red one, wasted heat, that it goes down to a wood pellet production plant. Mm-hmm. Because the municipality also owns a wood pellet plant. It's located 150 meters aside of our data centers. It's very close by. So we use, in order to produce pellets, you need secondary forest material or sawdust, pressure, and heat. And once you have produced the pellets during the summertime, you can store the pellets in huge bars. And then in the autumn and fall and winter time, you sell it to the homes, and they're using the pellets instead of oil. It becomes very popular in Sweden, and we're also exporting pellets, and it's a great source of heating. It's 100% renewable. In fact is that just transporting the secondary forest material by lorries from the wood, that is still causing less carbon dioxide emissions than to leave it in the forest and having the decompositing process rottening everything over a couple of years. So we are actually avoiding a lot of carbon dioxide emissions. And that is why we say that we will, at the end of the day, become climate neutral. It's not that we're not causing carbon dioxide emissions, because it's impossible not to. But with our solution, we are actually avoiding emissions by replacing oil with pellets. And also in the combined heating and power plant, when it's really, really cold in Falun, 800 hours a year, then they are using gas when it's minus 11, but when it's really getting cold, minus 18 degrees below Celsius, then they're using oil. If they can use our pellets instead, as you understand, we are avoiding a lot of carbon dioxide emissions. And this is what we want the industry to accept, that the avoiding of emissions is worth a lot as well.
Yeah, I think, Lars, it's good to make clear here that what you have today is an air to liquid heat exchange happening in order to transport that heat. Isn't that correct?
Today we got both. We have air-based cooling for those that are having low density, but we also have liquid cooling.
Okay.
So we are providing both services to, depending on we're providing very much a bespoke solutions, particularly for HPC, because HPC deals is not 10 kilowatt or 50 kilowatt. That is 1 or 2 megawatt each time. So then we're providing a completely bespoke solutions.
Mm-hmm.
So with that said, this is the standard in terms of the sustainability calculations. It's called the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. This is important, and it's, as you can see, 3 scopes. Scope 1, which is everything directly. Scope 2, which is very much power, and Scope 3, which is in upstream and downstream. And looking into this, none in our industry, to my knowledge, has done a complete scope calculation. That means that what people are presenting to the market is Scope 2. We are buying purely renewable energy. For instance, German companies are buying a lot of green certificates from Norway. I think they in 2018, they acquired 50 terawatt hours. But it's purely not possible to distribute 50 terawatt hours. And you can later on look in a rear, see that it was only 5 terawatt hours distributed from Nordic to Germany. 5 terawatt hours is still a lot, but it's only 10% of what was actually acquired. So when we're talking to German companies today, some of them has come to the conclusions, it's not worth buying the green certificates any longer because it doesn't help anything. We need to be close to the source of the power production. Then I come back to that.
I was going to say, anyone who knows of any other data center or organization which has done the Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3 in its entirety and wants to share, please put it in through the Q&A. All right, sorry, Lars.
Yeah, that's great. I'm very eager to understand it. So if we go to the next slide, this Scope 1, direct. Fact is that already here I can say that it's impossible to be climate neutral because a data center consists of reserve power. And reserve power needs to, on a regular basis, be tested. And when you are testing the gensets or the diesel aggregates, you are causing a lot of emissions. You are, because you need to run them once a month, and you run it for half an hour or an hour. So there is automatically, though very limited, it's very small, but there is an emissions component into our business. And that's the big one in Scope 1. Next slide, Scope 2. Scope 2 is purely the power that is inputted to the businesses. And if you're running with renewable energy, then it is zero. It is. And we're running it on renewable, and so are a lot of our competitors. Unfortunately, in many other countries, it's not. And the largest data center region in the world, I think, is Northern Virginia. I think last time I was calculating it, it was more than 5,000 megawatt deployed. And most of the companies there are claiming that they are running on renewable energy. But when I was looking at the statistics, only 5% of the power produced in Virginia is renewable. So I don't understand how the math works there. So scope 2 is important, and in Nordic, most of the companies claims that they are climate neutral. But next, scope 3. Now we're looking into some interesting facts. Scope 3 is important because that is every emissions that is built into your business. For instance, when we're building the data center, the building in itself, that has caused a lot of emissions. We are building everything in glued wood. Glued wood is by far much more sustainable than a concrete and steel construction. Concrete has in the past been one of the worst industries in causing emissions. Today, they have done great efforts and great improvements. So they are causing less emissions, but still they can't compare with the glued wood solution construction. And from time to time, I also get the question, isn't it a big differences between concrete and steel construction and wood construction in terms of fire? And the fact is, yes, it is. Our glued wood is much better protected to fire than a concrete and steel construction. And there is a lot of YouTube facts that you can see if you compare the two constructions, that when the concrete and steel construction collapses, you will find 1 millimeter of soot on the glued wood construction. But of course, if it comes that far, the server will most probably be destroyed anyhow. So now go back one step. It's one more.
One more here.
Yeah. So indirect, you're building the data center that is fully loaded with emissions. Mm-hmm. Your technical installations, particularly the batteries, that is also fully loaded with emissions, and someone needs to pay that bill, and we do. So we have done, and we are in the process of calculating. We have done it for our construction and the building and land, and we are currently doing it also for our technical installations. We will pay our share of the environmental bill. Next one is scope 3, indirect. And in that sense, our kind of industry will have more or less nothing. That will be zero. But so what I'm claiming is that our industry is losing scope 1, and particularly the first part of scope 3. So with that said, we will no way still be climate positive that we are claiming to be. We are causing climate carbon dioxide emissions. But this greenhouse gas protocol also now are considering a fourth scope. And the fourth scope is called avoided emissions framework. And that is what we are claiming important to consider in our industry. In order to be fully sustainable, how can you actually reuse the heat? Because heat is in itself an asset, but it's also a source for potentially avoiding emissions by replacing oil and gas.
We're doing a lot of work with companies and with institutions throughout Sweden and in Germany. So basically in Northern Europe, I would say, where it's all about heat reuse. Yeah. And a lot of very interesting projects. And I'm sure some of your Swedish colleagues have shared a lot of that with you as well. Stuff they're doing up in Luleå and other places.
Exactly, you're perfectly correct. And in Stockholm is very common because Stockholm is after Dubai, Stockholm is the largest district heating system in the world. And Sweden has a lot of district heating systems, while in Norway, I think it's 3% of the homes heated by district heating system, and on Iceland I think it's 100%. So it's a variety of possibility for companies depending on where they're located to reuse the heat in a district heating system.
Lars, I'm just a tiny bit conscious of time at the moment. If
Yep.
we can just,
Sorry. So the next one. Okay. This is a small part. This actually contains a full report with all the scopes, including also scope 4. So I don't understand, something went wrong with this slide. But for anyone that is interested can get in touch, and we can show how we are now applying the, okay, perhaps it is scope 1. Okay, so that's the way. That we are applying this protocol to our industry, saying that our industry will have a fully P&L and a balance sheet, and not only what I call gas flow now, to be a bit funny, because the gas flow, that is how they are measuring today, but I also would like to see a P&L and balance sheet, because when you are building or constructing a data center, that will need to be depreciated over a certain period of time. And that's what we are also allocating to our customers. So whenever a customer comes to us and wants to deploy 500 kilowatt of capacity, we will also be able to say, this is your part of the balance sheet, and this is the P&L that we can provide you with in terms of carbon dioxide emissions. So you can just step by. We're doing it here, and we are now validating. And here you can see, this is great. We are having a gross emissions of 22.2 grams of carbon dioxide emissions per kilowatt hour. It's unfortunate. It's not it's impossible not to causing any carbon dioxide emissions. But the next slide, we are also in the process of reusing the heat in such a way that we can avoid a lot of emissions. And this is important because if it's not included in the calculations, companies won't take the benefit from reusing the heat or building ecosystems. I think it's absolutely crucial for us going forward. And I know that Google in Monaco last year said that in the future, everyone needs to be reusing the heat. I agree with that. So the next slide is a more visual. Okay, there disappeared one slide, I think. Okay, anyhow. So coming back to the next slide, what we are looking into now is to build up a solution with suppliers and our own design to provide the most sustainable computing service there is. Because if not, the HPC segment will become a huge negative impact to the sustainability. But if you're putting it in Nordic, in Iceland, Norway, or in Sweden, you will avoid a lot of carbon dioxide emissions. And with our solution, I think that you can take even one step further and reuse the heat in such a way that we will provide customers with a certificate, more or less, for emissions.
Okay.
So that's very much it.
Lars, we have received a number of questions that I'd
good.
like to delve straight into, and let's see how quickly we can handle them here.
Yeah, sure.
So first of all, you have gotten a very big pat on the back from a certain gentleman saying that it's fantastic to see you mention Scope 3, and you're the first colo data center that he's seen it from, which is fantastic. We also have OVH in France as a comment, is low carbon, uniquely powered by nuclear energy. For those who maybe don't know, if we consider the EcoDataCenter here at 11 grams per kilowatt hour of carbon, then, or CO2, then we talk about 1,000 for coal, about 500 for energy generated from natural gas, and then we go down to 50 and less for renewables, and 50 is kind of, I believe, what nuclear is at. but that's
yeah, it's interesting. You are correct that coal is depending on the age of the plant. It could be somewhere between 900 grams up to even 1,500. Oil is of course also very high. Gas is correct. I think that nuclear is the lowest in that sense. I think that in Sweden at least the nuclear is some 5-6 grams, but it's still not considered as renewable. So they are disqualified in that sense. Today hydropower is the most causing the less carbon dioxide emissions of the renewables. Hydro, it's in Sweden in average 9 gram.
Okay. Also a question, do you publish a holistic pie chart showing scope 1, 2, and 3?
Well, no, not yet. This is still in progress because before we publish anything, we want to verify all the numbers. With that said, it means that we shall not do the calculation ourselves. It should be, because otherwise it should contain some subjective measurements. So 11 grams for the power, that has been validated by the utility plant. It's the national utility company Vattenfall who has done that. And the construction is made by a PhD working for the construction company. So what we are struggling with now is how we should actually validate the usage of the heat of the pellets in the homes, because it gets such huge number that could be questioned whether it should be minus 200 grams or minus 400 grams. So we are working together with Boston Consulting Group in that terms, because they are very much focusing on sustainability in Sweden. So they are helping us out with that. So we are not publishing anything yet, but we are welcome to discuss it with anyone and together develop this idea even further.
Okay, so I'm sure anybody who's interested in that can reach out to you directly.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Quick question regarding the reality is that most data centers are still being built into traditional way with mechanical cooling, etc. What should be done to really speed up the implementation of more energy efficient technologies like liquid cooling and OCP, according to you?
Well, yeah, in the past, up until year 2018, our industry was purely focusing on PUE and to lower PUE. And today, when a lot of companies has come down to 110, 115, or even lower, depending on the design or quality as such, then PUE in itself becomes less and less important, and reliability and sustainability becomes more important. So I think that even though that the average in the world is some 1.6, there is still a lot of things that needs to be done. But right now in Nordic, at least, I think that most of our competitors is down to 1.10 or 1.15 in PUE. So it's more in terms of reliability of the design and the reusage of the heat that will become more important. But in order to become having a low PUE, the technical development is still very important. It is, but not as important as when the PUE was 2 in average for the industry, of course.
Okay, and then taking from what you said earlier, also the real source of energy generation, the real source.
Being close to the generation, because we have to bear in mind that the third largest consumption of power in Sweden, that is distribution losses. It's still 10% of all power produced in Sweden that is lost in distribution. So being close to the source is also, of course, a more sustainable solution for the society.
Okay. All right. Last one here for you, and then we shall close this session. Have you done the design and the project management yourself for the EcoDataCenter, or did you bring in a third party to do so?
We have done everything ourselves, to be honest. And the first data center, before we convinced our main shareholders the real estate investment trust. Then we did everything on our own with our own money. So more or less, we have a personal relation with each part of the first building. And we did all the design ourselves. So it's been very, intensive, of course, but now we know each part, each square centimeter of, and each part of the technical design by detail. And now we are also, of course, putting a lot of effort into technical experts. So that's very important. But yes, we have done everything ourselves so far.
Okay, great. I did get another question in also. What do you use a backup source? I think it was evident from what you showed, you are using diesel generators, is that correct?
Well, in terms of power, yeah, we got the UPSs and batteries, of course, and DC generators, but we also have two end solutions for cooling. So we have two completely separated systems for both power and cooling, which is a bit overkill perhaps in terms of cooling, but we believe that reliability is extremely important also for HPC going forward.
Okay.
So it's a tier 4 design for those that are familiar with the graduation, but we have not been certified by Uptime Institute.
Okay. A lot of people are choosing not to be these days for obvious reasons. But anyway, Lars, I'm just going to wrap this up here, but like while I do, just also extending a huge, huge thank you. Very, very interesting. Really enjoyed that and enjoying ways in which we can work more efficiently together.
Indeed.
And every success with EcoDataCenter. Congratulations on what you've done. And again, this will be available recorded. I would also like to bring people's attention very quickly to an ebook that has recently been published just last week regarding immersion cooling. The 3 W's, and I believe they're what, why, and when, reading this. And of course, for anyone to reach out to us should they have any questions regarding immersion cooling. And also we can redirect any other questions to you, Lars, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You have all my contact details, so anyone is more than welcome to interact with me. I enjoy having a dialogue with the industry. Absolutely.
Fantastic. And I will share your home address with everybody so they can get straight to you. No, that's fine.
Well, I got a German Shepherd, so beware.
Very, very good. So really, thank you. Wrapping it up. And thank you everybody for taking the time. Hope everybody stays safe. And looking forward to connecting with you all very, very soon.
Thank you very much, Turan. Thank you.
Take care.
Take care.